speaking of your speaking career, you've spoken extensively in front of hundreds of audiences about and have written a book entitled Peak Performance Under Pressure. So what drove you to write that book, and what do you think the big takeaway is there?
I noticed I was in the corporate world for 26 years with a large commercial real estate company called CBRE. I represented Morgan Stanley around the country. And I noticed that Top Gun and fighter pilots, we don't have an exclusive ownership of tension, anxiety, stress, and fear. Everyday life is tough for lots of people. So I concluded over time, I said, I could probably take the lessons that we learned at Top Gun, I learned as an ace. When I first put some of my speeches together, I interviewed 26 other aces to find out how they became aces. I was always fascinated by the fact that less than 2% of those that ever flew airplanes in real air combat accounted for greater than 40% of the enemy shot down. So how come such a small percentage accounted for such a large percentage of the shootdowns? So I interviewed 26 of them, and they accounted for 212 kills to find out what their keys were. I was struck by the similarities between their approach and the approach that Cunningham and I took. Some differences, but some real surprising similarities. So my view has always been, and I'm sure you both agree with this because you're both high performers in your own fields, the best teams get the best performance. So therefore, what does a good teammate look like? And Sandy, you know how anal we are with how we pick our instructors for Top Gun, or how the Blue Angels pick their replacements. So when I do my speeches, I do a lot of audience participation. So rather than me telling them what a good teammate looks like or how we pick our teammates for Top Gun, I ask the audience to tell me what a good teammate looks like to them. We have a lively discussion. Nobody's made to feel uncomfortable. And then I say that, we get 45 to 50 candidates for 2 or 3 spots at Top Gun each year, as does the Blue Angels. And I say that, for example, that there are 3 key questions. Number 1, can I trust you with my life? Number 2, can I count on you to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, no matter what? Number 3, are you willing to live by and be judged by a higher set of standards than everyone else?
Mm-hmm.
I ask the audience, I say, of these 3 things, what do you think is most important? The answer I'm looking for is trust. And I tell them that the way we build trust at Top Gun is we hold ourselves mercilessly accountable. That's how we build trust. The next thing I tell the audience is I have a picture of an aircraft carrier, and I say there's 5,000 sailors on board this ship. They're working for well below minimum wage, 12 to 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week when we're operating. Not all of them, but many of them will run through walls for the captains of these ships. How do they do it? So I ask the audience, tell me, what does a good leader look like to you? And again, we have a lively discussion. Usually what I do is I hand a yellow legal pad to the senior person there and ask them to take notes. So they take notes. And then what I'm going to tell them is, this is what the sailors are asking these captains. Number 1, sir, do you know me? Because if you know me, I'm going to know you. Sir, do you care about me? Because if you care about me, I might care about you. And number 3, sir, are you willing to help me get better? Because if you are, I'm going to get better, and that's going to help you. I ask the audience, I say, those 3 points, what do you think is most important? The answer I'm looking for is care. Because if you care for your people, you're going to get to know them, and you're going to get to help them. Things like that. So we do a lot of audience participation. I briefly explain how Top Gun does the goods and the others. But if I was speaking to, for example, Raytheon, then I would say, but rather than talking about how Top Gun approaches goods and others in their debriefs, and I have a picture of the Raytheon logo, and I say, for Raytheon today, tell me, what are you good at? And again, we have a lively discussion. And then after about a couple minutes of that, I smile at the audience and I say, now, it wouldn't be fair just to talk about what you're good at without rotating the question 180 degrees. I said, the next one is others. I'd say, what do you need to get better at to operate more effectively? Kind of a lively discussion. It's many times the senior executives in the front are looking around going, geez, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't hear that. So it's interesting.
Sometimes it takes a third party to bring that stuff up.
Many times it does. And I'm not going to make anybody uncomfortable, anybody feel embarrassed, but it's a lively discussion to try to peel back the onion in some respects on the corporate culture of a particular audience that we're talking with.
What you just described, Willie, is very reminiscent of what something that General Colin Powell told me one time, and that is the essence of leading people is to hold them to the highest possible standards while you take the best possible care of them. And you just very articulately expressed exactly that in talking about how sailors want to know you care about them, and also the standards that we hold people up to. It's absolutely terrific.
So I know we've been holding you hostage here for a little while, so I want to respect your time, but I have a kind of a get off the stage question, and it's about the future. Because the Air Force just announced the winner of its new fighter competition, and the Navy is also supposed to do so any day now. And we haven't had an ace in a long time. So how do you feel about the future of aviation? And it really kind of goes back to where we started with the Top Gun conversation with respect to, the technology in the aircraft now, it's just amazing what's available to the pilot. There's, drones and collaborative combat aircraft. There's artificial intelligence coming online. What are your thoughts about all this and the future of fighter aviation? It's complicated.
It is complicated. I tell you, I've been going up to Top Gun. Sandy, you probably know this. I've been the graduation speaker for the last 34 years up there. I do a talk up there called Air Combat. I've been invited back to the Air Force Academy. They have a character and leadership conference I talked about a little bit earlier. Been invited back there 4 or 5 times. I'm actually, do you know a guy named General Mike Cedarholm, call sign Homie? You met him, Sandy?
No.
Top Gun instructor.
Nope, sure don't.
Anyway, he's the general up at Camp Pendleton. He's bringing me in the 2nd of April to give a big speech to the Marines. I don't give canned speeches, so I interview 5 or 6 audience members about a month prior to find out what's important to them, what they're good at, what they're not good at, their biggest challenges, what they worry about at night. We take all this information, I think about it, I read all the interviews very carefully, and then I tailor things accordingly. My sense is I was back in Boston about a month or so ago. I gave a big speech to students at Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Boston College, and Tufts. Interviewed a number of those students getting ready for that speech. What I see in today's world with this younger generation is they are really smart. They get it. They want to do a good job. They love the country just as much as we do. They're coming at it from a different angle. They're really with it with the technology. So I am extremely optimistic that the current group, with all the challenges, and they're severe, believe me, there's so much information today, but I think this current generation is going to rise to the occasion, meet the challenges, and perform brilliantly when they have to.
That's a good high note to end on.
Yeah, Bill, thank you so much this has been a terrific conversation. And I really meant what I said earlier when I was a little wet behind the ears guy trying to learn how to fly the F-14, and I had Willie Driscoll on this flight schedule in my back seat. I knew that I better have my act together because I was going to get peppered with questions before we flew. And I better have my act together because he was going to be checking how well I prepared. And that's something that stayed with me throughout my career. And so I owe you a debt of gratitude from back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and we were flying together. But terrific having you on. And thank you so much for being with us today. And we wish you the very best in the future. Thanks for being one of our country's aces.
And Sandy, I'll close with just this thought. I've met a lot of folks in my career in the Navy and a lot of business people. I will say this very sincerely. I'm very glad that you're serving in the capacity you are today because you were a blue chip guy as a lieutenant. You stood out. You were really smart. You were very determined. You were extremely polite. And you were just leaning into it right when I first met you. And I'm not the least bit surprised that you ended up as a 4-star admiral in the most senior leadership positions in naval aviation. I'm so grateful that the country has someone like you, and you've performed brilliantly throughout your life. And from folks like myself, thank you again, my friend. Much appreciated.
You're too kind, and you had something to do with it, though. So thank you very much.